That's time for sales to be redefined. It's time to take on a new cultural perspective of what it means to be sales guy. It's about being the guide and helping your prospect or your buyer become the hero of their own story. Big part of mastery is teaching others. And there's always someone that's one or two steps behind you. So you always have the ability to share your knowledge and experience and help someone else. Coaches often confuse a forecast review or a pipeline review or a deal review as coaching. Coaching is really about maximizing that rep's potential in the current playbook.
This is the Relentless Pursuit of Winning podcast, where we are here to educate, equip, and inspire people to build extraordinary companies. We're so glad you're here. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so that you can get updates every time we drop a new episode. Now, let's get it started. Hey, guys, welcome to another episode of the Relentless Pursuit of Winning podcast. My name is Rick Meekins. I'm going to be your host today, and in the studio, we have Shane Jamison. How are you, sir?
I am doing well today. Thanks for having me, Rick.
My pleasure. My pleasure. I was looking forward to this show, man.
Yeah, me too. I've been excited. I've been talking to my wife about it all week.
Cool. Well, folks, if you don't know, we're going to be getting into the heart of sales today. Shane's got an amazing history, and he's going to get into it in just a minute. But what I would ask you to do is please make sure you subscribe, hit the bell, make sure you get updates as we drop new episodes so that you can stay on top of all the cool stuff that we're talking about. Shane, would you do us the privilege and the pleasure of introducing yourself?
I am Shane Jamison, and I am a sales guy. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. Most people don't want to say that, but the truth is that it's time for sales to be redefined. It's time to take on a new cultural perspective of what it means to be sales guy. You know, it's not about the silver tongue pitch, man. It's about being the guide and helping your prospect or your buyer become the hero of their own story. And that's really what it's about. And that's what my mission is to help salespeople redefine what they do and how they go about doing it and help businesses and owners. You know, sales isn't a dirty word, and we've got to embrace it. And if you embrace it the right way, we get great results.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. I think from, our conversations, you've really successfully, in my mind, taken, a lot of the stigma, off of the sales. And it goes from, as you said, that, okay, you got to pick up the phone and get your 9 rejections to get to your 1 call and blah, blah, blah. And, all these, ratios. But, it's like when you move it from that to, hey, we're helping people, connect with, the solution that they need. It's just like, okay, this is different. It's like, some of that stigma is off. So I appreciate that. I'm sure our audience will too.
Yeah, there is still going to be rejection. There's still going to be people that say no, but I think it takes the burden off us as salespeople to get people. Our job is not to get them to say yes.
Yeah.
Right. If you're trying to get them to say yes, you're going to do and say things that might not be in their best interest. And that's no way to start a relationship. And when you shift that perspective, it's not easy, but it's something that it's a lot more fun to do. It feels better. I just want them to make a decision, and that can be a yes or a no. As long as my job is to provide clarity, understand their challenges, provide relevant information. With that clarity, they can take action, and that action is a decision.
Yeah. I got to be honest with you. I mean, I've used, some of your recommendations again from our conversations, and it's when someone says, hey, it's not a good fit for me. It's not as personal. It's just like, oh, okay, yeah, I can understand that. Anything else I can do for you, anybody I can connect you with, rather than just like, oh, man, you're killing me. I can't do this anymore. Again, I love what you're doing. I absolutely love what you're doing.
Appreciate it.
Give us some of your background, where you started, how you got to where you are, how you had this amazing epiphany of how to do sales better.
Sure. So 25 years in sales, and I started in college selling cell phones, AT&T wireless. And, all my friends were coming out, getting degrees and stuff and making, 30,000, whatever, in whatever their profession was. And I was, still in school selling cell phones and making a lot more than them. And I just, took the job, because it wasn't like, oh, I need to do this. I just took the job and then kind of fell into it that way and realized, like, my first year, I'm 19 years old and making 6 figures. And like, this is pretty good. Like, I enjoy doing this. I enjoy what this is all about. So that started me on the path. And then, it really was, from there, 25 years in sales, everything from transactional sales, like at AT&T Wireless, all the way up to complex enterprise sales where you're working 7-figure deals. And and, it takes a year to close a deal. And along that way, early on, once I finished school and started into kind of the first sales job, I got very fortunate and found a role with a really strong leader who was built a culture of results, but also a culture of coaching. And so we went through, it was really built into how we did everything. It was all about preparation, practice, and then reviewing, execute, and then review that execution. And so, everyone was always there for feedback, to listen to each other's calls, to help where we could. And there I grew into the VP of sales, where I was running about 300 people and, really enjoyed it. But when I left there, I thought like, that's how it's going to be everywhere. And real quick, you learn that is not the case. Most companies don't have that coaching element. And so as I moved up, you continue to move up in your career, and I went to more strategic sales and bigger and more complex sales. And, a lot of times it was really frustrating getting into a new role or new company and not having that feedback. And you got to figure it out on your own. And, one thing, sales is often compared to sports. Like, it's a really easy comparison to say, because there's kind of a scoreboard with the revenue. And, all of a sudden, but you don't play a sport in a vacuum, right? Like, you don't just go out and practice without any type of feedback. And a lot of companies are set up like that. They're just like, you hit your number. And I realize a lot of reasons for that is that there are, a lot of people that are in that position. They were maybe on the right side of demand. They executed and they got promoted, but they didn't necessarily have a playbook or didn't understand what good coaching looked like.
Yeah.
And if they did, there's a handful that probably just don't care to coach. They just expect you to show up and do your job. But I think it's really the most important thing. And that's what led me to, as I work with bigger companies and enterprise sales, I often realize like, it feels like it's kind of built on a house of cards, meaning that there is demand for the product. The product may be good, but like, there's no real sustainable, scalable system. We're just going to keep throwing money and bodies at it, and like, we'll hit our number. And that's one way to do it, but it's often not, like I said, sustainable. And so that's where I started really focusing on the side, like, how can I work with companies and businesses to help them realize and build a foundation that they can then grow and scale and not be so stressed at the end of every month or quarter or year about hitting their number. They just know it's going to come, because as much as it is an art, there is a science to it, and there is sales math, and it's hitting the numbers, but understanding those numbers. So that's what led me on the path to where I am now, which is coaching and working with clients and companies and salespeople and sales leaders to help them take control of their success and stop waiting on their company to save them with, the perfect playbook.
Yeah. What is the perfect sales organization culture really look like, from your perspective?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't know if I've thought about it in those terms, but I believe that it's first and foremost, everyone needs to understand what good looks like. And I think a solid culture means that no matter who you ask within the organization, you're going to get the same answer, because we're all playing on the same page. We're running the same plays. And so in order to do that, you got to have a clear understanding of what good looks like. That's understanding the numbers, that's doing the preparation, the practice. And then it's one that is really focused on the results. And so it's not, hey, we're not here the feedback is not to tear you down. It's just so that we can get better and get results. So there is that. It should feel a lot like a sports team or some organization that you're part of, where you're trying to, what I love about sales and what I love about sports is that you're trying to do something hard together. And that's where you build really strong bonds with people. And, as an organization, the sales team is out there leading the charge to hit a number. And most of the time that number is never easy. The CFO or the board is never like, hey, let's just give them a break this month or this quarter or this year and make it easy for them to win. No, it's always just a little, you can't just show up and expect to hit the number. You're going to have to push a little bit. And then if you want to exceed that, you're going to have to push a little bit more. So I think the perfect culture is one that's just built around results, and that, hey, we're all here to do something hard together, and we all have our best interest at heart, because that's what's going to serve the company and the mission that we're on.
Yeah. I love that. Now tell me something. I mean, raising the bar. I mean, isn't that something that, is a motivator for salespeople? They see a new target, I mean, obviously it has to be I would assume it has to be, reasonable, but, has that been a motivator for you?
It's not just the number. I think it's what that number means. If you're a part of an organization, it's like, okay, we want to hit $1 million. Well, what does $1 million mean to the company? What is it? And then from there, you start to drill down to what that means for the individual involved and how that helps their lives, right? I think that the number isn't what motivates. And I think this is a common misconception that salespeople are just motivated by money. And the truth is that people are motivated by having a purpose, being part of something greater than themselves, having a sense of mastery in their role. Like I can show up and get better at my job, and then having a sense of autonomy that I can show up and I'm given charge to do something, and I have the skills, the support, and the resources to go out and do it myself. And if those are in place, like the outcome is winning. And I think that winning is what people like, right? A good culture is a winning culture. I've got several friends that are football coaches and high school football coaches. And one is a Texas high school football legend at this point, just won his 5th state championship. And, the interesting thing about that is that if you look at schools with winning sports teams, their test scores are higher. So like the point is when people win, it raises the standard of what's expected and people will rise to meet that standard.
Yeah.
And so that's what I think is really important is that we can throw whatever number we want out there and say, hey, it's you got to hit $10 million and you're going to make $1 million. That's great. Everyone wants that. But at what cost? And is it really possible? And am I going to grind myself to the bone trying to do it and lose everything else I have? And the truth is when you make it a reasonable number, make it hard to, it shouldn't be easy to hit, but it should be realistic. And then you set it up so that we all feel like we're winning.
Mm-hmm.
And you raise the standard of the organization.
Cool, man. Awesome. Keeping with the sports analogy, you talked a couple of times about preparation and practice. Dive in a little bit on that for us.
Yeah. So I think, you look at in business and sales, especially, we're expected to execute 99% of the time. And the truth is we don't always execute very well when that's the case. There's no time to reset, review, and then, move forward.
Mm-hmm.
So you look at like a football team, for instance, and I mean, they're like flipped. 80% of their week is spent preparing, planning, practicing, and then 20%, if not less, is spent executing. So we don't need to do, it doesn't need to be that level of balance because that's not real in the real world as far as
Mm-hmm.
business is concerned. You do have to execute, but we do have to find time to really invest in that preparation and practice. And most people don't like doing it
Mm-hmm.
because I know everything, or I don't know everything and I'm going to be embarrassed if I go through this, or, there's ego involved with that. And the truth is that you need to, at the baseline, understand who's your ICP,
Mm-hmm.
know your numbers, know who you're selling to, what their pains and challenges are. And so that starts to know your value proposition. So that's kind of the foundation of a sales org. And so what we do is we continue to go back and review and rehearse those things, right? So that it should be second nature to us. It's like an actor. If an actor is Anthony Hopkins, for instance, said, I learn my lines so well that in the moment, I don't even have to think about my lines. They're just coming out of me. And then he goes, that's where the great improvisational moments come from, is because I'm so deeply entrenched in this character and have internalized this world that I don't have to think about it. It just comes out. And I think that is the same should be said for in business or sales.
Yeah.
Is because you've got, I often ask when I start working with a company and working with a rep or a leader, like, hey, tell me your numbers. And they can usually tell you what their quota is and what they're on pace to attain, if they're going to hit the quota or not. But they don't always know how to work backwards into it, right? Like, in order to hit this number, how many leads do I need to have? How many meetings do I need to have? How many of those meetings need to, going down through those conversion rates? And so really getting to the detail and understanding those numbers, that's part of the preparation. That's part of the practice. Now, who do you sell to? Like, who is your ICP, your ideal customer profile? Most don't know that. And when I'm talking with sales reps, I have to often say, your company's ICP might not be your ICP. because a lot of enterprise reps, you have a different set of companies, and what your ICP is, that's your best customers that spend the most money and close the fastest.
Uh-huh.
So if I'm an enterprise rep and I've got 20 accounts, well, mine might be slightly different. The point is you should know that. It should be defined. And knowing what good looks like means knowing your numbers, knowing the definition of that, and then knowing who those people are, because we're not selling to companies, we're selling to people.
Yeah.
Who those people are, what are their goals, challenges. And that's really how you go about, once you lay that groundwork and you're consistently going back and revisiting that, understanding how we position and the words we say and do and use to position ourselves for success to best serve our prospect or buyer. That's what we're practicing to do. And I really think that's the core. I mean, I think 20% of our time each day or week should be like, how am I getting better?
Yeah. 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 So you're going back, you're evaluating, whether it's calls, notes, whatever that is, you're saying, hey, this was a win, this was a loss, need to do more of the win. What happens when, so you've got what you believe is your ICP. And well, let me ask this differently. Do you see a need for different approaches based on, I don't know if it's personality types or roles or, whatever it is, even though it's the same product?
Yeah, I think it's important to understand who your buyer is and meet them where they are. And, we don't have to drastically change things in order to do that. You kind of have the line, and the point of like really internalizing what that path is and the things you say and do and the questions you ask is so that what you can have the ability to pivot or go off the path, but you know how to get back on because it's entrenched in what you do. And my belief is that, I'm going to talk to every person different because I'm going to listen to what they have to say. And then I'm going to try to learn their language. And then the key is I'm going to speak their language to them and not try to, I'm not a pitch man up here just saying whatever I want to say and hoping something sticks to the wall, right? Hoping someone says, yeah, that's what I want, right? I want to speak to them and understand what their challenges are and then use their words and the language that they're using to relate that to our solution and how we're going to be able to help them, right? And this is an area I think most salespeople and business owners miss is that they just want to pitch. They just want to tell you what I can do for you. And especially like founders that I work with, technical founders, they believe that like, if I just tell you everything I can do and how great our product or service is, you're going to see my genius and then you'll buy. And the truth is these people are dealing with, one or two problems. They have one or two priorities that they can really think about. And if we talk about anything else outside of that, it's devaluing our solution. Yeah. And that's what we want to focus on is really identify what those things are. What are the words that they're using? Use those words to be able to speak their language and show that you understand them and that they are being heard.
I love that. Yeah, I keep hearing, give them what they want before you give them what they need. That certainly resonated with me. One thing I didn't hear you talk about, I'm a process guy, and I didn't hear you talk about a sales process. Where does that play into this conversation?
Yeah, I think you have to have a process, and most people don't. They just get a meeting, they show up to the meeting, and they just start pitching, and then, they're not necessarily following, they're just kind of winging it. And so part of that process is understanding how we move through someone that's a buying cycle, like the seller's process, right? We've got to align our sales process with their buyer's journey, right? There's, and that's where people often make a mistake is we just try to push them down this sales process, but it's not meeting them where they're at. So I think when you do that, I think it's really about how do we have checkpoints basically to understand, am I mapping it? I don't need to force them down, but understanding, okay, they need to do something. Like that's what's motivating them to make a change, right? If they need to do something, do they need outside help? Do they need someone that they're willing to invest in, or can they do it themselves? And then lastly, if that's the case, do we have the best solution? So now we can sit there and go, okay, we can sort of have these checkpoints that we're trying to hit because each organization has a slightly different sales process, right? But the key to it all is like, hey, let's spend some time understanding what you need. Let's spend some time sharing that relevant information and how it's going to solve that gap. But the goal is really to co-create. And so I don't want to be rigid in like what those steps are, other than I want to make sure I'm hitting these checkpoints. I'm understanding, are they motivated to move? Do they see the value in this?
Yeah.
Meaning, like, can they justify this from a business perspective and not only just an emotional perspective? So being able to build that business case to justify it.
Yeah.
And do I have the right people involved? Right? Am I speaking to the right people? Am I helping the right people? Am I understanding who in this organization this will actually impact?
Wow.
And so hitting those checkpoints is really the key to the process. And within that, you can really dig into like, okay, what is their current situation? What are their priorities? And that starts to answer those checkpoint questions. And then what is their buying process? So I think this is something that a lot of people are afraid to ask. It's like, we think, oh, I've done a discovery, I've done demonstration, I've sent a proposal, now they should be ready to buy. Taking a step back and saying, hey, what has to happen on your end? Like, I know, you obviously maybe you're the one making the decision, great, but what else has to happen, right? Do we have to get other people involved? That's why instead of saying who else is involved in this decision, I'll often say, who does this impact? Who in the organization is going to be impacted by this decision? So I get a list of who those people are before we start saying like, oh, let's bring in other people because you're not enough. A lot of people, if they're the decision maker, they don't care about like if someone else in the organization says it's okay. So we understand who is impacted by this, and that starts to get a clearer picture of who's involved. And I think that the overall gist of it is to like hit those checkpoints, and then however you create your process, try to align that to the buyer's journey as opposed to just forcing them down to the next step.
Yeah, I got you. That makes sense. So while you were talking about, the other stakeholders that are involved, I started thinking about the buyers versus the users and, how, that can sometimes be an issue. One of the things, and I'm thinking more, I don't know, somewhat transactional sales, shorter sales cycle. I get a lot of offers, LinkedIn, and I mean, honestly speaking, I mean, it's easy to just like look at it and just say no right away. I'm flipping the table. I'm the person that's out and I'm prospecting. What kinds of things can I do to kind of bypass or kind of soften that initial push so I'm not immediately rejected?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple things. First and foremost, it's understanding who your buyers are, and we call them buyer personas. So understanding at 3 levels, and I think those 3 levels are the executive level, like the manager, director level, and then like the user level, because each one of those people have different concerns, different challenges, different goals that they're trying to accomplish. And so if I'm reaching out and prospecting, who am I talking to? Am I talking to the exec buyer persona? Am I talking to the user buyer persona or the manager buyer persona? My messaging is going to be tailored to each of those people and who they are. So that's where I think you start, is like, we have to start at a very high level, because if they're cold, we don't know them. So what we do know is their title, or that they are a type of, they're part of a type of company that we can help. We know, we have an idea, understanding which persona they are. We have an idea of what those challenges are. We have an idea of how our solution can solve those challenges. And so we start there. And then if you get interest, then we can start digging deeper and get more specific with what their challenges are. And that's where we start to speak their language or understand their language and what they care about and their priorities. So I think that the first part there is understanding who those buyer personas are, and go to the exercise and really label them, like have an avatar. It's Executive Eddie, and this is what he cares about, and this is what they're trying to do, and getting as detailed as you can, because now you're speaking to someone. And this is the problem, especially when you're prospecting, is what we're just speaking to everyone. When we're speaking to everyone, no one's listening, right?
Yeah.
But we want to speak to them and use the words that we know. We start at a high level and then see if that works. What you're going to find is that 90% of the time you're going to get rejected. It's not going to work, but you'll catch those 10%, and then you'll get a little bit better, and then you can maybe broaden and get a higher success rate. But you got to start there. You got to start at a high level, speak to them and know who you're talking to, and then start to dig in from there.
Cool. Awesome. So I've gotten to this person that I want to talk to, going to present my offering. What do I do? What are some things, or what are some tools you can use to help to, I guess I'm going to go with prepare for, potential objections.
Yeah, I think there's a couple things. First and foremost, and when you understand what their priorities and problems are, your proposal, your demonstration, whatever it may be, really needs to be exclusively about those things. We may have 20 other things that could help them, but that's their primary. So what I'd suggest is first and foremost, focus it there. We can always have that stuff in our back pocket. And if it comes up, we can address it reactively. But what's going to sell is solving their biggest challenge, their biggest problem. Anything else, again, just starts to devalue that. I think I often say, if you have a closing problem, it's not that you have a closing problem, you have a discovery problem. You're making assumptions, you don't know what they really need, and you're making guesses. And that's why people don't close. People will follow you down the path because they're nice, but then they won't spend money when the push comes to shove. And if that's the case, and you feel like it's a good fit, it's likely because you didn't understand what they really needed or what they were really saying. So I think that's it. It's always, like to really can't focus on more than like 3 changes or challenges at one time. They really need to be hyper focused on those. And the more focused they are, I think the more successful they are. So in sales, just really understanding what that is. And from there, and a lot of times I'll just say is like, we don't need to know just the challenges that we can solve. We want to start at a high level. What are they experiencing? What is their major initiative as a business? Right? Talking to an organization the other day, and they said, hey, we just want to level up. It's like, great. Every organization wants to level up. What does that mean? It means like, hey, we need a new tech stack. In order to get a new tech stack, we need to have better data. We need to have all these things. And so the solution I have that didn't necessarily solve each of those problems. My job is to say, with our solution, this is how it helps those problems, right? This is how you start to build a solution that goes beyond just my product or service. And that's where you become that trusted advisor, that credible, source of information, because you're not just trying to get them to buy from you. You're thinking about their business as a whole, and that's what they want.
One of the things I've seen it happen a lot, and I was actually a sales manager probably so many years ago. Same problem then, I see now is salespeople, especially we'll call them legacy salespeople, there was always this challenge with getting them to use the software, doing the data entry and making sure that, we as managers had the data that we need in order to make good decisions. What have you seen, and, what have you recommended, or how have you addressed that?
Yeah. I mean, I think that is that starts at the leadership level, and, ensuring that we have the right data is really about like data hygiene and understanding. I think there's a couple ways to go about doing it, but if that's not happening in an organization, like that's where we start. You need to be recording everything, and that we need to be, as leaders, talking about that each and every day until it's just, we don't have to talk about it anymore. Then we can kind of take that next step. But, I always used to say from a very tactical perspective, like if it's not in our CRM, then it didn't happen. And that means you could lose that deal because we have no proof of that. Right. Yeah. So you need to be extremely disciplined in recording what happened. I think the other part of that is that people, often there will be fields within like Salesforce or another CRM, and they've got to fill them out, but they'll fill them out, but it's often stuff that they're guessing. And so I think how you do that is how you fix that is that you go back and listen to the calls with them and do call reviews. And so that we really understand, because as salespeople, we'll often we'll delude ourselves, and we believe that we asked the question and we got that answer. And then you go back and look at the game film, and they said something completely different. We just took it the wrong way and went with it. And we never stopped to sort of pressure test that. Right. So I think when you have to get down to it's like, what it reminds me of is, have you ever heard what John Wooden would do, who was the basketball coach at UCLA many years and won tons of championships? Like, he started every year with teaching his team how to tie their shoes. Because if you don't tie your shoes right, then your shoes get loose, and then you get blisters, and then you can't play the game, right? You're affected. It impacts the game. So we would start at that level. And I think that's the same approach when it comes down to like data hygiene. It's like, hey, we've got to understand this at a very, very minute level and do the small things right before we start getting to this pie in the sky, complex strategic ideas. That stuff's great. That's fun. But if we're not doing the small things right, like none of that stuff matters. Maybe it works, maybe it won't.
Hmm.
right? But that's getting down to that level of minutia where we're just like, we're making sure we do this right.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Awesome. How are you seeing artificial intelligence impacting sales?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of discussion. There's a lot of companies right now in the sales world where they are selling like AI sales agents and things like that that you'll never have to sell. And that's really appealing because no one wants to do the selling. That's the hard part. But I see it as something that's not necessarily replacing it. But if you're the salesperson that's just hitting send on emails and blasting out emails and just, pushing buttons,
Hmm.
then you'll be replaced by AI. But if you're the salesperson that is strategic, that's thinking about the buyer, that's, getting creative, sales, I think business is creative. Sales is really creative,
Yeah.
right? Like getting creative in how you approach that situation. Now you're using AI as a resource and a support system to take care of the manual work that you don't want to have, which is like data hygiene is a big one, right? So I think one of the problems we see with AI and data hygiene is like you have all these tools and it'll automatically input and capture the data,
Hmm.
but all we're doing is creating we're hoarding digital data because you've got to go back and make sure one, it's right, and like kind of review it and ensure that, hey, this is really what's happening.
Yeah.
So I think those salespeople and sales leaders that understand, hey, I sales is a creative pursuit. I've got to use my brain. I've got to do things that aren't necessarily just pushing buttons.
Yeah.
They're using AI to make that easier so that they can spend their time doing the things that they're best at, which is that creative and strategic pursuit. So that's where I see it now. AI, I really see it as a way to surface information at the right point in time
Hmm.
so that you can make a decision. I see it as a way of capturing data so that we can make sure that we have some data hygiene and that we can but it still takes that human to come in there and validate it, right? And make sure that this is right and we're moving in the right direction. So I say all that and I could be completely wrong. As fast as it's moving in 6 months, we could be gone. I don't know. We could not be out of a job, but I don't see that necessarily happening right now because the truth is, I think people, we may be B2B, right? Selling business to business, but we're really just selling to humans and people
Yeah.
want humans to talk to. And if it's a point solution, right, or it's a transactional, maybe I see like some use where AI and sales agents can do that. But
Yeah.
these more complex sales, I think would be difficult to pull off with just a AI sales rep.
What about from the perspective of like data analysis though? I mean, really
Yeah.
help drill down that
Yeah. I
ICP.
mean, that's exactly it. I think, people rarely know their ICP. And that's something that we often do with my clients is you may have a vague definition of it. Like when I'm done, we're going to have a very clear definition. We're going to know exactly the size of company, the type of company, their tech stack, like exactly who you're talking to. And how we do that is take that data, run it through AI and build these prompts and do a couple cycles of that and iterations of that until we get a really clear definition. So we understand who our best clients are that spend the most money and close the fastest.
Yeah. 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 Awesome. Awesome. Hey, do you mind if we talk about sales redemption?
Yeah, I'd love to. I'd
Is it
love
that's
to.
on the table? We can talk about that?
Yeah, of course. That's really right now. That is a big focus of mine in 2025. So I'm thrilled to talk about that.
All right. Let us let us know what that's about.
Yeah. So Sales Redemption is a community for founders, executives, sales people, sales leaders. And it's really built off this trend that we've been seeing the last several years. Salesforce came out with a state of sales report, which they do every year. 24 or 2023, 84% of salespeople missed their number. This year, 2024, it didn't look to be getting much better. And, you start looking into, I think there's a systemic problem with that, meaning like the board, at every level, boards giving unrealistic numbers and leaders not, there's breakdowns at every level. But
Mhm.
what we realize is that the salespeople and the frontline sales leaders are often, they're craving just some concrete proven processes and systems that work. And the other part to that is that enabling them, not it's one thing, you can find everything online, right? Any template, any framework, any methodology is online. You can find it, you can download it. It takes that human effort to really coach to it. And I think that's where a lot of people don't have exposure to coaching. And so we wanted to be able to find a way to provide the resources that they need, but also introduce them to what good coaching looks like. And coaching isn't about the company. And that's where a lot of leaders, because 80% of leaders say they coach, 30% of reps say they get coaching. It's because coaches often confuse a forecast review or a pipeline review or a deal review as coaching, when those are all about the company. And coaching is really about maximizing that rep's potential within the current playbook. And so it's a different approach. And, I think it's like 90% of Fortune 500 CEOs credit their success to outside coaching and mentorship. And yet when we start early in our career, I don't need a coach, is what you most often hear. Like, my company's got this, or my manager's going to coach me. And the truth is that maybe they will, maybe you get lucky, but it's not really the truth. So how do we expose people to what good coaching looks like so that they can take control of their success and stop waiting for their company to save them? And that's really what it's about, is providing the resources, providing the coaching. And then the next part is like bringing people together around a common interest that they can learn from each other, because rising tides raises all ships, right? Yeah. And so we want to be sure that they get exposure to other thinking and other perspectives, and all through our lens, which is the sales process that we put in place, and ensuring that they get, just a system and process that works.
So signing up for Sales Redemption, that's free, right?
Yeah. Salesredemption.com. You can sign up for it for free. It's a great community. We've got almost 500 people in there now. We'll have, it's continuing to grow at a very fast rate. We've only launched it about a month ago now.
Amazing.
And yeah, I think that the big thing is we found that a lot of people are coming in and just sharing their experiences, sharing their stories, asking for help from people in the organization. And people want to do that. I think a big part of mastery is not only learning and applying it, but also teaching others. And there's always someone that's one or two steps behind you where you are. So you always have the ability to share your knowledge and experience and help someone else. And so we're seeing a lot of that happen right now.
That's awesome. Awesome. And you have some free tools that people can take advantage of if they go there?
Yeah. So if you log in, first of all, you'll join the community, do your introduction. You can access a classroom, which has a bunch of videos and courses to take, and they're digestible 5-minute videos, but it really walks you through our approach. And then we're going to start. The first step is really starting to understand your numbers. So know your numbers so that we know we don't have to improve one aspect of it. It's not like, we need 1,000 more leads. No, you just improve in small incremental steps at each stage. So from lead to first meeting to proposal stage to closed one, whatever those stages are, understanding what those percentages of conversion are. And now we can be really prescriptive. The second is understanding why you lose the deals. So we recommend going through a postmortem, looking at your last 10 opportunities, 5 opportunities, whatever that is for you, and understanding why you lost that deal. There's 5 fatalities that will kill any deal. And that is trust, product market fit, timing, competition, and price. So those 5 will kill deals. And looking back at your deals, why did I lose these? And you'll start to see a trend. If it's price, okay, now I know how can I fit this into my qualification or early on in the conversation so that I can get ahead of that. Or maybe it's product fit or trust. Like, you can really start to get prescriptive. So understanding what my numbers are and why I'm losing, that's where you see the biggest increase. And most people, it just takes a little bit of work. And when you do that, you create awareness. Many times awareness is curative in and of itself. When you're just aware of what the problem is, you subconsciously start making decisions and moving in a direction away from those problems. So, but if you do that and then you combine it with coaching, that's where you'll start to see, people go from hitting 50% of their number to hitting 150% of their number.
Yeah. That sounds awesome. Hey, we run out of time, man. This has been a good conversation.
Oh, I could keep going. We can go another 3 hours.
I know, right? So if somebody wants to get in touch with you, they want, one-on-one coaching with you, or they want you to come work on their sales organization, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
ShaneJamison.com. That's gonna kick you off to any of those others. You can go directly to salesredemption.com as well. And then of course I'm on LinkedIn and those social sites, but LinkedIn is just username is Shane Jamison as well. So yeah, hit me up on those sites. You can schedule a meeting with me. I'm happy to have a conversation and see what we can do to help you out.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll get all those links on your page and on the show notes, so anybody can go there and get all that great information. Shane, thank you so much. Enjoyed our conversation. Looking to talk to you again in the near future.
Yeah, we will, my man. Appreciate it, Rick.
Awesome. Folks, thanks for watching or listening to another episode of the Relentless Pursuit of Winning podcast. We'll catch you next time.